My friends, have you ever wondered why, just when your relationship starts feeling solid, something or someone seems to test it? It's not a coincidence, it's a pattern, and it's time to expose it. Most people think that problems in love come from miscommunication, timing, or just not being compatible. But what if I told you there's something deeper at play? Something strategic? We don't often stop to think about how much strength we actually draw from the people we love. Not just in the big moments, like celebrating wins or grieving losses, but in the subtle, quiet ways that shape our day-to-day resilience. Your relationship, when it's healthy, is your anchor. It keeps you grounded when everything else feels chaotic. It's your personal sanctuary in a world that constantly demands, drains, and distracts. And because it's such a powerful source of energy, belief, and confidence, it becomes the first thing that the enemy targets when it wants to weaken you. Let's talk about that enemy. This isn't just a person. It can be a thought, a fear, a past wound, a toxic voice in your life, anything that doesn't want to see you whole, connected, or at peace. These enemies don't always come in obvious forms. Sometimes they're dressed as ego. Sometimes they're unresolved trauma. Sometimes they're self-doubt, whispering that you're not lovable enough, not strong enough, or that your partner doesn't really have your back. And here's the truth. These forces don't want to just hurt you. They want to isolate you. Because when you're isolated, you're easier to manipulate, easier to discourage, easier to derail. But when you're in a strong relationship, one built on trust, communication, and mutual respect, you become nearly untouchable in a very specific way. Not invincible, but grounded. Grounded in the kind of emotional security that makes it much harder for the enemy to get inside your head. That emotional power source gives you perspective when things go wrong. It gives you the courage to dream bigger, to take risks, and to be more vulnerable, not less. That's a threat to anything that feeds on your fear. Think about how many times in your life you've made your boldest moves when you felt supported, when someone believed in you, when someone loved you, even when you were doubting yourself. That kind of connection doesn't just feel good, it activates something in you. It turns up the volume on your potential. And that's why it's so important to protect it. Because once your relationship becomes your source of strength, clarity, and energy, tearing it down becomes a tactic. If the enemy can't defeat you directly, it'll go after the one thing that gives you your fight. It's no longer about you making a bad decision or not loving hard enough. It becomes about an unseen force doing everything it can to drain your battery at the root. And here's the danger. You might not even notice it happening. The slow erosion of trust, the subtle doubts planted by past hurt, the moments when instead of leaning in, you pull away. That's how the power starts to leak. You don't need a dramatic betrayal for a relationship to lose its strength. All it takes is enough interference to make you forget what that relationship really gives you, or worse, to make you believe it's a liability instead of your lifeline. So if you've ever asked yourself, why does it feel like we're being tested right now? The answer might be this: because you are. Because your relationship is valuable. Because your connection is powerful. And because the enemy doesn't waste time on things that don't matter. Your relationship matters not just to you, but to your purpose, to your stability, to your future. And when you realize that, you stop seeing conflict as a sign of failure and start seeing it as a call to defend what gives you life. Would you like to expand the second keynote next? Of course, is the expanded version of the second keynote. Divide to Conquer as a continuous, engaging narrative up to 600 words without headings. One of the oldest and most effective strategies in warfare is to divide and conquer. And this tactic isn't just reserved for empires or armies. It shows up in our relationships all the time. If someone or something wants to break your strength, the easiest path isn't always a direct attack. It's creating distance. Distance between you and your partner. Distance between what you feel and what you express. Distance between what's real and what fear is telling you. Because here's what most people don't realize. Disconnection doesn't always start with a blowout fight. Sometimes it starts with a thought, a doubt, a small wound that goes unspoken, a pattern of silence. The enemy knows that the foundation of every strong relationship is unity. Not perfection, but unity. Two people facing the same direction, having each other's backs. So the attack starts by slowly turning that alignment into opposition. And you stop feeling like a team and start feeling like you're on opposing sides trying to win arguments instead of solving problems. That's exactly how it works. The enemy doesn't need to destroy your relationship overnight. It just needs to get you to stop trusting your partner's intentions. It needs you to believe that your partner doesn't see you anymore, doesn't hear you, or worse, doesn't care. And when that belief creeps in, your defenses go up. You protect yourself, you withhold, you blame. And every time that happens, the gap widens. Not because you don't love each other, but because love gets buried under misunderstanding and fear. What's tragic is that most couples don't see this as an outside tactic. They internalize it. We're just growing apart. Maybe we're not meant to be. But no one asks, who benefits from us growing apart? Who benefits when we don't communicate, when we give up, when we stop trying? It's the enemy that thrives in that division. Because as long as you and your partner are divided, neither of you can fully stand in your power. You're stuck in your own heads, your own assumptions, your own wounds. You stop being mirrors for each other's growth and start being shields against perceived threats. That's not love, it's survival mode, and no relationship can thrive there. This divide doesn't always show up in dramatic arguments. Sometimes it's two people living in the same house but feeling 1,000 miles apart. The conversations are shallow, the laughs are forced, the intimacy fades. And the worst part, you start thinking this is normal, that this is just what happens over time. But it's not. It's the result of subtle sabotage, of an emotional wedge that went unaddressed until it became a wall. But once you recognize this pattern, you can fight back. You can refuse to let that wedge grow. You can choose to ask hard questions and lean into uncomfortable conversations, not away from them. Because connection doesn't just magically exist. It's built every single day through small acts of choosing each other. So when you feel the distance creeping in, when the silence feels heavier, when the spark dims, when the disagreements become personal, stop and ask yourself, is this really us? Or is this something trying to divide us so it can conquer what we've built? If you can ask that question, you've already taken the first step toward protecting the connection. Because awareness is the enemy of sabotage. And unity, the real intentional kind, is how you win. Let me know if you'd like the third keynote expanded next. Absolutely. Here's the expanded version of the third keynote. Love is a threat to fear, crafted into a compelling narrative, up to 600 words with no headings. Love, in its truest form, is one of the most powerful forces we can experience. Not because it's romantic or poetic, but because it dismantles fear at its core. When you are loved, really loved, you start to believe that you're worthy, that you matter, that you're not alone. And that's dangerous to fear. Because fear can't coexist with that kind of truth. Fear thrives in isolation, insecurity, and silence. But love shines a light on all of it. And this is why the enemy, whatever that may be in your life, whether it's doubt, trauma, outside influence, or your own inner critic, targets your relationships. Because love disrupts its power. It exposes the lies fear wants you to believe, that you're not enough, that you're too broken to be seen, that you'll never be truly accepted. But love comes in and says, you are already enough, exactly as you are. That kind of statement terrifies anything built on shame and fear. Think about how you behave when you feel genuinely loved. You stand taller, you speak with more confidence, you dream more boldly, you stop walking through life like you're waiting to be rejected. Love gives you the kind of security that frees you to take risks, not just in your relationship, but in your purpose, your creativity, your vision for your life. It's not that you suddenly stop being afraid of everything. It's that you no longer let fear make decisions for you. And that shift is everything. This is why love is not just a comfort, it's a threat. A threat to the systems inside and around us that want to keep us playing small. When you feel deeply connected to someone and they remind you of your worth on the days you forget it, fear loses its grip. When someone sees your mess, your past, your flaws, and chooses you anyway, fear has nothing left to accuse you with. That kind of love dismantles the fear-based stories you've carried for years. What's the enemy do? It tries to distort love, twist it, make you question it. It introduces insecurity, comparison, past trauma, anything it can to make you believe that love isn't safe, that you shouldn't trust it, that opening up is dangerous. Because if fear can't kill love, it will try to keep you from experiencing it in the first place. And if you've already found it, it'll try to get you to sabotage it, to push it away, to stop showing up fully. All because the enemy knows when you're deeply connected, you're deeply powerful. There's a reason the most secure people in the world tend to have strong, healthy love in their lives. Not just romantic, but deep connection in general. That connection provides a buffer against the lies that fear uses to isolate and weaken us. Love calls out the greatness in you. It tells you you're not your worst day. It reminds you that you can begin again, that you can heal, that you are more than what you've been through. So yes, love is a threat, but not to you. It's a threat to everything trying to keep you afraid, a threat to the belief that you're not worthy, a threat to the cycles that have held you back for years. That's why the attack on your relationship often begins not when things are going badly, but when they're going right, because something sees what's being built and it's scared. The more you understand this, the more you'll fight not just to keep love, but to protect what love gives you: freedom, wholeness, courage, and the ability to walk through fear, not be ruled by it. Let me know if you'd like me to expand the fourth keynote next. Certainly. Here's the expanded version of the fourth keynote. Your relationship reflects your standards as a compelling narrative, up to 600 words, without headings. The truth is, your relationship doesn't just reveal who you're with, it reveals where you are with yourself. It's a mirror, and what it reflects most clearly are your standards. Not just the kind you talk about when everything is going well, but the ones you live by when things get hard. The ones you uphold when you're afraid, when you're lonely, or when you're triggered. That's when your real standards come to the surface. This is why relationships are such a prime target for sabotage. Because if someone or something wants to erode your self-worth, it doesn't always need to come at you directly. It just has to convince you to settle, to lower your bar, to accept behavior that doesn't align with your values, to get you to believe that this is just how it is, or worse, that this is the best you can get. And once your standards begin to erode, it doesn't just impact your relationship, it bleeds into everything: how you speak to yourself, how you show up in your work, what you tolerate from others, and even what you dream about. You start shrinking to fit into spaces that don't deserve you. You compromise not just your preferences, but your principles. And the enemy wins not by destroying you, but by convincing you to abandon yourself, one quiet concession at a time. That's the real danger, because the decline isn't always obvious. It happens gradually. You brush off the red flags. You make excuses for disrespect. You silence your intuition so you can keep the peace. You stop asking for what you need because somewhere along the way, you were made to feel like it's too much. And that version of you, the one that stays quiet just to be loved, is the version that fear is banking on. But here's the other side of that coin. When you raise your standards, you raise the quality of your life. And not in a prideful, perfectionistic way, but in a way that honors your value. When you demand honesty, clarity, respect, and consistency, not just from your partner, but from yourself. You stop entertaining connections that drain you. You stop mistaking chaos for chemistry. You stop mistaking chaos for chemistry. And here's what most people don't realize. Your standards are not just about what you expect from others. They're about what you believe you deserve. That's why the enemy targets your standards first. Because if it can lower them, even slightly, it knows it won't have to work as hard to convince you to stay in something that's slowly diminishing you. And that's why protecting your relationship isn't just about protecting your love for someone else. It's about protecting your relationship with yourself. The person you are in your relationship is often a reflection of the love you've chosen to accept. And when you choose love that aligns with your higher standards, it elevates you. It challenges you to grow. It stretches you in the best ways. It reminds you not to settle for anything less than truth, alignment, and respect. So if your relationship is under pressure, if it feels like something is constantly testing your peace, pay attention. Ask yourself, what part of you is being targeted? Is it your boundaries, your voice, your sense of self-worth? And more importantly, have you begun to believe that lowering your standards is the only way to keep the connection? Because once you start believing that, the enemy has already done its job. But when you wake up to the truth that your standards are sacred and your relationship should rise to meet them, you reclaim your power. You stop fighting to keep something and start fighting to keep yourself intact within it. And that changes everything. Let me know if you'd like a conclusion to tie all 4 of these expanded keynotes into a final call to action. Absolutely. Here's the conclusion to powerfully wrap up the entire speech, tying together all 4 keynotes and ending with a strong call to action. So now you see it clearly. The attacks on your relationship aren't random, they're strategic, because your relationship is more than just companionship, it's a power source. It fuels your courage, sharpens your focus, and keeps you anchored when life gets messy. That's why the enemy targets it. Not because it's weak, but because it's strong, because it's valuable. It knows that if it can divide you, it can weaken you. That if it can create space where there was once closeness, it can breed doubt where there was once trust. It knows that real love is a threat because it silences fear, it confronts shame, it builds confidence, and it dares you to dream beyond your limitations. And perhaps most importantly, it knows that your relationship reflects your standards, that if it can slowly chip away at what you believe you deserve, it can get you to accept less than what's worthy of you. And when that happens, your power doesn't disappear, it just gets buried beneath layers of compromise, fear, and exhaustion. But you don't have to let that happen. You can choose to fight differently, not with more arguments or blame, but with awareness, with intentionality, with the courage to protect what's sacred before it starts to slip away. You can look at your partner and say, we're not going to be distracted by what's trying to divide us. We won't forget who we are when we're united. You can remember that love is worth defending, not just for the relationship, but for the people you're becoming because of it. God. So here's your invitation. Don't let the enemy write the story of your relationship. Don't let fear have the final word. Reconnect, communicate, show up fully. Because when 2 people fight together instead of fighting each other, the enemy doesn't stand a chance. This isn't just about romance. It's about power. It's about purpose. It's about the life you're building and who you're becoming along the way. Protect that. Fight for that. Because that is the real reason the enemy is targeting your relationship. And now that you see it, you don't just get to walk away, you get to rise. Together, let me know if you'd like this whole speech formatted into a video script or turned into slides or content chunks.